Hi everyone, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and we're back today to talk about another TNG novel. And we're on number 14 this time, which is Exiles, the new novel by Howard Weinstein. Now, I think this is the second novel by Howard Weinstein I read. The first one I think was called Power Hungry, which was maybe number 6 or 7. I don't remember what I thought about that one. I thought about watching the video, but I'm just going to go ahead and read this one and see what I think. And I think it was pretty good. So before we jump into that, let's kind of go over the cover here. So, right from the cover, Picard must sacrifice the Enterprise or watch two worlds die. For 3 centuries, the people of Village and the people of Etelos have been bitter enemies. However, when crippling disasters strike both worlds, each planet becomes the other's only hope for survival. With time running out, Captain Picard and his crew are called to negotiate a peaceful settlement and begin rescue efforts. But some factions would rather see both planets perish and will stop at nothing to prevent peace. Soon the Enterprise crew is caught up in a web of intrigue and terrorism that culminates with an act of ultimate revenge against both peoples. Revenge that will mean the destruction of two worlds and the Enterprise. I swear a lot of these summaries end with that same thing. And the Enterprise. And here a nice little quote at the bottom as well. Howard is to be congratulated on a highly entertaining and very socially relevant story. Gene Roddenberry. So, that's what we've got there from the cover. Bit of interesting trivia, that quote by Gene is apparently one of the only times a quote by Gene has appeared on a novel. And that was taken from a memo that Gene, I guess, wrote him about the book. So, alright, so Exiles by Howard Weinstein. Now, first off, I did finish this book a couple of days ago on April 9th. And in between now and then, I actually read a whole nother book, which is coming up soon, and then started another book. So this one is not as fresh in my mind as typically these videos are when I sit down and do them, because usually I do them like right when I finish them. But luckily I've got this wonderful big journal of notes here, and we'll draw upon that and kind of re-go through the story here and remember what I thought about it. Initially, what I will say about it is it was a very cool story. It had a lot of very interesting points in it, but I felt that it did kind of suffer from maybe jumping around too much and maybe too many extra characters that didn't need to be involved. So, with that said, let's kind of just jump in and talk about it. So, the story starts off with the Enterprise being called in to negotiate basically a treaty between these two planets, Alaj and Etelos. And the story actually starts off by introducing you to the planet Alaj and its leader, Kirster Zayla. She is shown basically kind of ruling over a mob, and everything on her planet is going wrong, and the whole first chapter is basically laying that out, that nothing's going right on her planet. At any moment, things could go bad, or people could rebel against her, and it could be all over. And the main reason for that is their planet has not taken care of anything climate-wise at all. So over the past maybe 300 or so years, they've just kind of done whatever they wanted to do, lived however they wanted to live. Now they're facing the consequences, and nobody's very happy. Nobody wants to do what they need to do to actually fix the environment there. So now you have this other group of people who are the same race, these Alasians. I guess before we get forward, let's get too far. Let's describe how they describe them in the book. So this race is described as 7 foot tall, with a prominent brow and cheekbones, a short muzzle, and a delicate nose. So, they don't have like a human face, maybe some kind of doggish face looking thing. And all very large. So this race, as a way to deal with their problems, they exile people. And one of the exiled groups was exiled some maybe 150 years ago, and they are the Atolans. And then we're introduced to them, and they are brought into the story as basically wanting to be brought to Alaj to be able to help them. And it would be a mutually beneficial thing for both of them because their planet also is under duress. Now, the Atolans are completely different than the Alasians, which is, I guess, why they were exiled. They are conservators, and they kind of make it their job to bring back endangered species and take care of species that are endangered, and that's what they do on their planet. Now, unfortunately, they don't have very much foresight because the planet they picked is exploding. Volcanic activity is causing a lot of trouble there, and they need to relocate. So they want to relocate to a planet close to Alaj, and hopefully, help Alaj fix their planet in exchange to get their own planet. So that's the basic plan. So they set off on kind of two separate missions. Riker, Data, and some crew, along with the ambassador from Atolos, head off in a shuttlecraft to Alaj to kind of establish relations with them, while Picard and the rest of the crew stay there on Atoll and just try to figure out the logistics of how you would evacuate a conservation planet. A planet that's full of not only people, but all sorts of endangered animals and different kind of biospheres and these kind of things. So they've given this kind of this impossible problem to solve. So the story does keep kind of like jumping around a little bit. So you've got Riker and them going off here, you've got Picard and the Enterprise there, and then they do bring in at the end here just a short little spot of this mysterious gas cloud. It comes in and a little scene short where it destroys these pirates that drift too close to it. Now then they go back to the planet and they have a little bit of a tour of the conservation facilities, and they meet the sacred animal of this of the Alasians, of course, of the Atolans, which is described as they described it as kind of like a short bird with long, thin legs, and I've drawn a picture here. So I would say something like that. Anyway, they describe the appearance as sort of silly, and these people revere them, and they kind of had to hold back a chuckle at the sight of them. It's kind of like silly little bird creatures. But these are revered creatures, and one of the main problems in the story is because of their terrible habits. On Alaj, all of these creatures have died. The last one has just passed away. And on Atolos, they only have a handful. I think maybe 8 or so left. So one of the parts of the deal here is that they're going to give a couple of these to Alaj so that they'll have some left, because these animals are basically sacred. And once the people find out that they don't have any, it's going to be all over for the government there, and there's nothing that they can do. I did forget to mention that Alaj is officially a member of the Federation, and Atolos is not, which is kind of one of the reasons why the Enterprise is here, doing this. So, like I said, this story kind of goes all over the place. It jumps back and forth now quite a bit as it kind of flies through the next few chapters. You've got scenes of a bomb attack at the conservatory. So somebody there on Atolos is actively trying to sabotage the efforts of getting this piece back together. Again, you get another scene of the gas cloud. It comes and envelops a freighter. And then you have a scene, you go back to Alaj. Now you have Riker and them, they're there on the planet, and they're going to start the negotiations. So, we're going to give you a couple of birds, you're going to give us a planet, we're going to help clean things up. And it all just goes really, really, really well. So, basically in one chapter, they get to the planet, they meet with Kira Zela, they negotiate, and they reach an agreement, and they fly away. And that's it. And they're just it's kind of just advancing the story along and along and along. But now we're getting to a little bit of action. So the shuttlecraft on its way back, of course, encounters the gas cloud and is enveloped. So now you get to kind of see what happens when this happens. And as soon as it touches it, everything shuts down. Not only all the electronic systems on the shuttle, but all of the people as well. All of their brain systems shut down, and everybody passes out. Data is able to stay awake and kind of monitor the situation, and you see things through his eyes as he kind of watches things. I mean, there's nothing he can do, but he's kind of there and just is kind of taking care of everybody while they're getting ready to wake up. So then you kind of jump back, and back in the conservatory, the Nefertiti's that they had there, the sacred animal that they were going to give to Elage, are actually sick because of the explosion. So they got a little bit of a drama there, you know. They decide what they need to do is get them off the planet. So they beam them up to the Enterprise, along with their caretaker Roble. And they have like a kind of a little side story there where Roble's got a crush on Counselor Troy, and they go for a little walk on the holodeck, and they have some ice cream. And again, the story just kind of keeps moving along, and things are interesting enough and good, and it keeps you going on it, you know. So then you, at this point, I'm going to consult my notes a little bit because we're getting in deep here. So, on the shuttlecraft, the crew wakes up and they find out that they're actually aboard a giant ship. They make the comment that basically it seems like just from the size of the hangar bay that they're in, the ship must be something like 14 times the size of the Enterprise. So they wake up and they do a little bit of exploring, and basically all it is a giant empty hangar bay. They do get like an automated warning to return and do nothing prisoners. They've been trapped. But that's that. Back on the Enterprise, we're going to jump back over there. One of the Atolans who opposes this process of peace here, attempts to kill one of the little birds. But Wesley Crusher jumps in and saves the day, thankfully. And then they jump back to Elage, and there on Elage, people there who oppose the process do a terrorist bomb attack against Curister Zayla. So you can kind of see people on all sides opposing the prospect of peace, which I guess is kind of one of the themes that he's trying to pound forward here, is there's always going to be these people who are going to be trying to fight to stop these people from doing the right thing, and they got to keep trying to push through to do what they know is right for both these planets and what they need to do. Whew! Okay, so again, they just keep pushing along, but now they finally do give you a little bit of backstory into who is piloting this ship. So they give a small, maybe back half of a chapter to an Elasian former exile named Dunid, who is ancient as far as his very old, and speaks only with a computer AI who's named Noel. And you can tell that he's basically out for revenge. And they kind of just he's out for revenge for what the Elasians did, and nothing's going to stop him. And even though this AI is trying to kind of like talk him out of it, he's still out for revenge. So now the story's really kind of kicking along. Back on the shuttlecraft, they decide they've got to explore, they got to get out of this hangar bay. They find a little tunnel. So they do throw in, for some reason, like a kind of a little unknown character, this Ensign Lopez. And it's always one of those things when an author does, I'm thinking like, did they write this in because this is somebody that they know and they wanted to kind of put them in as like an homage to them? And that's kind of what I'm thinking maybe it was. Because why not just include someone else that we already know? But, you know, what do I know? She was a cool character. She was like a trapeze artist, so they had a nice little action sequence where they're climbing up the tunnels and a ladder breaks and she's doing some flips and manages to catch a ledge just in time. So you get a little bit of action in a book which just kind of has a few action sequences, you know, few and far between in there. But Riker, Data, and crew do explore further and further up the tunnel. They get further and further up the ship and actually at one point get to a console to learn more about them. And at this time you learn more about them through exposition from Dunid and his AI partner as well, that they are exiled much further before the Atolans were. So the Elasians have been dealing with their problems on their planet for a long time just by pushing them away. So they put all their dissidents and whoever they don't like in a ship, give them some food, and send them off. And these exiles, the Bakim, were exiled 150 years before the Atolans. And their issue was they were searching for truth throughout the universe, and they thought the only way they could do that was by traveling. And I guess the Elasians, they didn't like that, and they had just too many differences, and they were exiled. But it turns out that their search did not go very well, and they were basically wiped out through different plagues, and a group of them left, and it eventually came down to them just being one guy who was in this one giant ship that they had built over this period of time, maybe like 110 years or something. And it all came down to him, and he was nothing but just mad. And all he wanted to do now was just ram his ship back into Elage. And that's kind of where this whole thing is going to come to a head. And that's actually, I mean, really where the story picks up and gets, I would say, the most exciting. So we're getting down to like the last little bit. So at this point in time, the Enterprise does realize they've kind of picked up a distress from the shuttle. They know that it is trapped in this cloud, and they have made contact with Denid and have found out that he's on a destruction course and that nothing they can do can stop him. So one of the cooler parts of this book that I liked was I'm consulting my notes, excuse me. Okay. So they have to do something to stop them. And they realize that there's no weapons, there's nothing they can do with any weapon systems or anything like that to stop them. And it's a matter of if the ship crashes into the planet, 4 billion lives will be lost. And they only have one solution. And it's Worf that brings it up. He says, Geordi and I were working on this solution, and we've been through the possibilities, and we think it'll work. And it's the only one that's going to work. And it's going to be the Enterprise has to do a collision course, boom, smack dab into this giant ship. And if they do it fast enough and hit them at the right angle, they should be able to knock them off and destroy the ship so that they can't hit the planet and kill 4 billion people. And Picard says, yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking too. So that is basically like the last minute plan. You know, they're going to hold off until the very last minute, try as much communication as they can. But luckily, on the ship, of course, you do have Riker and Data still climbing up, and they do eventually reach the top, and they reach the bridge. So they reach the bridge, and they're able to speak with Denid and Noel. So they need to reach a compromise, and Denid is uncompromising. He wants to ram this ship into the planet no matter what. He's seen his entire group wiped out. He's the last one of his race, and nothing is going to stop him. But this AI is actually the one that's kind of in charge, and it could, stop this from happening. So what they do is they have to convince them of a greater purpose, basically. And what they convince them of is that they can use this ship to move all of the inhabitants of Atoll to the new planet. And then through this, and then of course the Data has to upload with the AI and show him all these facts to convince him of that. But through this, he's able to convince him that this is like a worthy mission. And then the AI shuts off the ship before it rains the planet. Woo! Everybody is saved, and that's like the grand solution there at the end. So it was good. I mean, like, I read through the whole book and I was interested the whole time. But then when you get to the end, you're kind of like, wow, it's just everything did seem to fit together like a little bit too easy, Like, here's this big giant ship, which perfectly solves the problem of these people on this planet that need this big giant ship to relocate. But they do get to the end in a fun enough way, with enough little things thrown in, where it does keep you interested. So, all in all, I think it was a really fun book. It seems like there were like a lot of little threads that they would have kind of started and like they just never revisited. Like there was the Atollan that tried to kill the Nefertiti, and nothing further was said about him. And then they have they do have some fun things where they kind of wrap up. The two Nefertitis that the Enterprise was carrying. One of the reasons they seemed like they were sick was because they were pregnant. So yay, they have a baby at the end, and they named the baby Beverly because Dr. Crusher was the one that was kind of taking care of them throughout part of it. So, it's a fun book that has like a lot of interesting things in it. Some pretty fun quotes. There was a speech from Picard as he's kind of laying it down to the crew. This is what we have to do. It's us or 4 billion people. And he says at the very end, we will die as we have lived together. So that was a good Picard quote and a good moment for the book, I would say. All in all, Exiles is a really fun book. It took some weird twists and turns, but it had some really, really fun ideas, and it got there in the end. It really did. So, another good novel by Harvey Weinstein, and I would say sit down and give it a read. I couldn't say who it featured the most, but, Picard, Riker, Data, and then you've got some interesting side characters that you get to learn a little bit about. And I guess when you look back at it, and like some of the main themes that you're looking at in this book, I would say, is conservation versus destruction, and vengeance, versus sacrifice, versus compromise. These people that were all enemies, or this race that basically considered these people so terrible they had to send them away, are saved. They're saved by these people they sent away, So, a lot of different themes, different ideas in this book. And all in all, just a fun little Star Trek book to read. Like I said in the beginning, after this book, I read this book. And this book was so much fun. So much different than this. And good, both good in different ways. So next video, Yesterday's Sun. Anyway, guys, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you all for watching, as always. Live long and prosper, and we'll see you next time. Bye.